Hi everyone, welcome to Data College where we help you build solutions to your data problems. Today, we are going to build a solution in Excel. We are going to work on a data entry template. It could also be used as a patient registration template, simple registration template, simple class registration, event registration template, where you have people either entering data for you and submitting with a button, and it goes into a hidden sheet, and you can also do some records. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about data validation. We'll be doing a little of Excel data validation. We'll also be doing VBAs as well as functions in Excel, Excel array formula, and all that. Great, let's get started. So, assuming you have a data, you collected a data and you want to give it to some people to enter it for you, it is very important to control how data is entered so you don't have errors, human errors in entering of data. Or assuming you want to register clients, you want to register people for an event, and you want to design a simple registration in Excel where when someone comes to register, it doesn't see the details of the people who have registered prior. Instead of writing on a paper, or instead of using the same sheet and typing your name at the bottom, you want to design a simple data collection entry registration form. We can go to view, and we do not want to see the grid lines. Actually, let's start with that. So we put off our grid lines, and we know that we have this Excel template this way. We can start with our border for our data entry. So we can go to our home and give some thick borders here just to start with something design. It is also probably good for us to uh, put some, let's insert our logo here for, yes, let's insert our logo. So here we have our logo in there, and we're going to push our logo somewhere to the corner there. And we are going to start our header at the top here, probably measure cells, and we call it data entry. We can give it data entry template, right? Data entry template as it is called, and we can change our font size and do some of these designs. You know what is best for you. Try and make a couple of changes in there. We move our text here this way, and probably we might want to underline the top with a bottom border this way. So we have that. So we start by defining the fields that you want to be uh, in your data actually eventually. So we would have our first name. You can call it F name. Then for first name, we will have the user enter something in a box here. We define a box here for the first name. Uh, Then we would define another box for last name. You can call it L name. Then we have last name box, also expanding it a little and then making it a box that looks like this. Then after that, we can have email, email address, same thing, works for email address. And here we are gonna have the phone. So basically, we can have two columns for our data entry. So it might be useful for us to delete these, right? So our email column as well should be defined. Then we would want to collect the gender as well. And then our gender, then we would want to have the age. So maybe any of that data that you want to collect about for each of the people or clients that you have. Maybe you want to say if the person can read, and if the person can write. Let's end it here for the purposes of this training. We are going to end it here. So we have the first name, the last name, we have the gender, we have the age, we have whether the participant or the client can read or write in that order, and that is what we are going to be using. So basically, the next step is for you to think about data validation. It is important that when you are designing data entry forms or when you're entering data in spreadsheet, it is important to think about uh, controlling the human errors that come in entering of data, and that might be useful for you to add a couple of validations here and there. An example will start with validation for gender. You may not want to leave it open for the person to type the gender. If you have the gender categories there, we will just go to our data at the top, adding data validation. We go to the data, then you can see the validation somewhere here. If you hover around the data tools, here you see validation and you can click on validation. There are a couple of validations that you can add. For the purposes of this training, we are going to add actually a list, right? So you can say any number, a whole number, decimal, list, date, time, test length, or custom validation, which we'll look at in for the subsequent fields. So we will say a list. If our list is in one sheet, we can leave it there. If we can select where the list is. If it is not, we can just come here and then type our list and say if we have male and let's say female is what we have in there. We press OK, and you see that our validation, we have only male and female that can be selected for that field. Age, assuming we want to have age uh, restricted to maybe adults, you're collecting data, entering data for adults, so you want to come to the same data, and then to the data tools, go to validations, and you can say a whole number. Age should be in whole number, and then between, you can check whether between equals to, not equal to, whatever logical operation you want to use there. We want to say the minimum should be 18 and then the maximum should be 120, and that will also be validated there for us. For the email, we might want to add a custom validation in there and say that email should have at, there should be at in there, there should be a dot in there, or you can add any other advanced custom validations in the email. But we are going to just add two custom validations in there to check whether the email contains the test at or and also dot. So we go to the same data, and the data tools, you have the validation in there, and instead of the list pre-listed ones here, we are going to select custom, right? So in the custom formula, you want to define a formula that will check and validate the entry that is going to go in cell D11. Now, for those of you who've used Excel before, you are thinking about how can we set a simple validation for email. So basically, you can use test search and search in the test and see, or find in the test and see whether there's an ad or whether there's a dot and return something and hear that. So we are going to basically use the search or find, for those of you who want to use find, and we are going to also use is number as one of our functions, and we combine it with an n. Now, what search will do for us is that when we search for a particular test, it returns the position of the test in the search that we, in the place where we are searching it from. So just for example, if here you want to search for let's say a in this field, right? So we say equal to search, and then we say we are looking for A, then we are looking for A in this test. You see, it returns to us 2. That means that the position for A is 2. It actually returns the first position of the test that we are looking for, right? So it returns a number. So when it returns a number, we can use its number to check and see whether that there is actually a 2 or something like that in there. You can also use find, but what find does is that find is test sensitive, case sensitive. A search is not. So if I say find and I change this small a to capital A, is it's not going to work because it's case sensitive. Search is not. It is case insensitive, so we can always use search. I love using search. But for what you are doing, you may use find, right? So now when we search for it, we know that if that there is a test in there, if the test is present in there, it will return a number. And therefore, we can also use the is number function to check and see whether it returns to us a valid position of that test, right? So you can check and say is number is here. You can see that its number, and then you can do that. It will return true or false if it is not a number. So if I put a Z here, setting for Z here, it says false. It is not a number. Now we can use this is number and search functions to construct our validation for the email address. So I'm gonna just copy this. Uh, but basically I'm just gonna basically we are searching for two different tests. We are searching for art, and we are searching for a dot as well, so I can replace this with art, right? But since we are searching for two and we want two of them to be present, we would join them with our excel end, and we would put the second, just copy this and then paste that in there. Right. So this one, we change this to a dot, right? Remember, this is false. Remember, we are still searching for this in cell D3. We will be searching for that in cell D11. So we have to change this to D11, right? And we change this as well to D11. So that way, if I write, let's say KKK at gmail.com, is going to return true for us. That means that we can use this, something like this, as our validation for email. So if you have that constructed well, you can just copy or cut that. Let's delete this for now, and then go to your validation for D11, and you paste that validation in the custom field that you have in there. Perfect. That way, when you enter anything without at and dot, it tells you no. Great. Read and write. So read and write as well. We want to add a validation for that. But for read and write, our options are yes or no or not applicable. So we might want to, in this case, we might want to add our option in a different sheet that we can call it options, right? Options. Then for the sheet as well, we do not want to see grid lines. Then we can say that this will be like option one. You can name it whatever you want to name it. We have the first is yes, the second is no, and then not applicable as well for that person is what you may want to define. So great. So we have this option which we are going to use for validation for read and write. So you go to your data, and then you go to your validation, and then you go to select the list as well. Then instead of typing the list in here as we did for the previous ones, we are going to select the source, right? The source where our list is. And then we go to options. Then we select this range is the source where our list is for us. And we press enter. You see? And that goes in well for us. We see read is yes or no and all that. The same validation is what we are going to set for the writing. Sorry, it's going to be a list as well, and the source of the list goes here, and we put that in there for you, and we are good to go. So now we have our fields that we want to collect. So basically, our fields are well defined here for you, and you may want to increase the font size and all that. Uh, Great. So we have the first name, last name, the email, phone, gender, age, read, and write. So now we are going to, now this is what they are going to be entering, right? Your clients are going to be entering, or whoever is doing the data entry for you is going to be entering. We can hide our options sheet here. We don't need that now. Now we want to define the sheet where the data will be going, right? When they enter it and they press the button where the data is going to be going. So you can create a sheet, another sheet here, and call it data. We can call the previous one template. Whatever name you want to give it is fine. Now, basically, you define the variables at the top of your at the top here. So we can start by defining our variables. So the key variables we have in there is the first name, last name, email, phone, gender, and age. So we're gonna have the first name, we're gonna have the last name, we're gonna have the gender, we're gonna have the email, we're gonna have the phone, we would have the gender, we would have the we will have the age, read and write. So we will have the age and whether the person is able to read, whether the person is able to write. These are our columns that we have there. We may also want to add uh, full name here, full name for us, full name, right? So this is basically our data collection, the data template where our data is gonna be. We add some thick borders here and there. Maybe we have no borders here. So we have it defined, predefined here for you to predefined here for you to see. Now, basically, we want to also remember we put full name in here, and you are not going to be typing. The user is not going to be typing here. All the user is going to be doing is just to enter, and it will be populated in the sheet here, right? And it's also important for us to add how do you call it? Add a serial number so you know how many pe- people or how many observations you have so we can add a serial number, right? That will be good for us. Some people might want to define custom functions, which we are also going to do for their full name. We want to define a custom function so that whenever they enter, it gives us the first name, concatenate the first name with a space delimiter and a last name in there for us. And we also want a serial number to be generated for each of the people. So what we are going to just do is probably copy this. An easy way to do this is to copy this and then repaste it in there, right? Then for this role, it will be the role where if you want to define any array formula and all that, you will put it in there. So let's define a formula for our serial number. We can basically use the sequence, right? We can basically use the sequence. So if you say that you are giving a you want a sequence of 1000, it's going to give 1 up to 1000, but we don't want this sequence to be predefined. We want the sequence to be given if and only if there is someone registered for that row, right? So we might want to say that for the sequence, we want to count the number of people that are registered in here instead of putting the value. So we can say that we are use the count a function. Then you can reference C 3 to C, let's say C 1000, whatever you want. So you can see that it is only one row that is here, right? That's fine. But remember, this row itself is it is a function row. We will not be using this row. We are actually going to hide it. So you may want your sequence to start from zero, so that the actual ones should start from where the numbers are given. So that way, when you define your sequence, uh, sequence has options. The first option is what we just defined, which is a required option, is the number of rows, right? Rows, we have columns, and where it starts from, and the number of steps or the differences. So here, since we define 1,000 rows in there, rows counting the number from C3 to 1,000, we might define our column to be one, because we want the sequence to be in one column, and we want it to start from zero. That way, it will account for this as zero, and if there's anything that comes here, it will be one, two, in that order. So we have our sequence well defined. Now let's do work with our full name. We want instances where if the data comes in to this sheet, let's say John Doe, we want the names to be concatenated here into a full name. Basically, you can use concatenate in Excel to do this, and that works well. But you might also want to, for because you're going to be inserting rows, right? Whenever they press a button, there's going to be a row inserting here for each of the persons or the client. It is important to use uh, Excel array formula. So we would write that function, that formula in the formula bar here. So we are going to say is equal to concatenate, select concatenate, and there's going to be the first name, comma, and then the delimiter should be a space, whatever delimiter you want, and then the last name comes in there, and fine. But this is going to happen for only this cell. If you want it to happen for a multiple of cells, Excel Alt Shift and then Enter will transform this into an array formula, which is similar to array formula in Google Sheet. When you have it this way, and you press when you are editing the formula bar, you press Shift, Control Shift and Enter, it transforms the function, the formula, into an array formula. That way, you can define a range of array you want it to be performed for. So we can say that this should be performed for C3 to C1000, as well as D3 to D1000 for us, and that works. So you can see that one formula in cell E3 is performing for John Doe, and whatever we put in here, it will happen in that regard. Great. So that being said, now we are done with our entry, our data receiving sheet. So we can now hide this particular row. Right. Now that we have our template, we have our data receiving sheet, it is now time for us to add the visual basics, the buttons and all that will enable it to run for us. Now to do that, we will first of all ensure that developer options are enabled. So you go to File, when you come to More, you will see options, right? If you see options in there, select option. When the options open, check for customize ribbon, which is here. And in the customize ribbon, go to the far right and ensure that the developer uh, tab is selected. If it is not, select it as you have seen for our own there. Select it in there and press OK. Great. Now, if you do that, you will see that a new tab has come to the top, which is called Developer. We're going to use that for our VBA, Visual Basics. Now, so we will go to Developer. If you come to Developer, there are a lot of things in Visual Basics. We are not delving into deep visual VBA today. We are showing you how to do a basic one, and then you do not need to write any code here. The code will be recorded for you. What we are going to do is that we are going to record, we are going to perform an action, and we are going to record it, right? And we are going to record it at the background, for so that whenever we press a button, that action can be replicated all the time, anytime we press a button. Now, what we are going to do is that anytime we want a data to be pushed into this tab, what is going to happen is that we would be inserting a role at the top instead of just logging the details at the bottom. Now, the reason is that when we insert a role at the top, we know that always the person or the details that we are pushing here will always be on role 4, will always be on row 4 for us, right? So our macros can always insert a role. And whenever we insert another role, it's going to push those ones down. So an example, assuming we have John Doe as our details in here, and we have other details in here, Mac looks, and all that. Anytime we have new details we want to push in here, we would be inserting a role at number 4. So always row number 4 is going to carry the new entries that is going to be for us. That means that ideally after the entry, the first entry here is going to be the last one actually entered, and the last one is going to be the first entered in that regard. Great. So we are going to go straight and then do our sample entry here. So let's say our sample entry is John, and it's Doe, and we have jdoe at gmail.com, and we have the phone should be 987. Yeah, that's the phone. Then the gender of jdoe is male. The age is 45. Jdoe can read. Jdoe can not write. Right. So now this is the sample data that you have, and this is going to be for every client or person that is going to be registered or going to be entered in your data. Now we are going to start recording our action. We are going to perform an action of pushing data from the template to the data sheet, right? Which is what will happen anytime you're registering a new client or you are entering data for the next observation and all that. So we trigger the record button. Now, when the record button is triggered, you have option of giving the name of your macro. We will call it data entry. For the names, no spaces are allowed, no special characters. You can use underscore in there. Shortcut, any shortcut that you want. Now, the shortcut is a combination of keys that one can press to replicate the action that is happening for that macro, or to run the macro in short. So we will say Control plus Shift plus E, right, should replicate that or should run this macro for us. If you don't want to use the shortcut, you can leave it. If you want to use the button, we'll work on the button option as well. You can go for the button option. Great. You can leave the store macro in this workbook and add description if you would like. Now that our macro is recording, whatever we perform here would be recorded in that macro, and we can use Control plus Shift plus Enter to replicate it anytime we want to push data in there. So we are going to start. First of all, we would have to go, as I mentioned, and then insert a role at number 4, right, which will take the next input or observation or client. Now we come back and copy the details. We copy John as the first name and we paste as values. We are pasting here as values because we do not want the formatting to follow it. We copy Doe and we paste Doe here as values. We copy the email. We come here and we put the email in there. We copy the phone number. Now we are doing this, and Excel is recording every action, the code behind it, VBA code that performs similar uh, job of copying and bringing in there. When we replicate it, it is not going to be as slow as you're seeing it. It is going to happen in the twinkling of an eye. Read, we copy read, and then we come and paste read in here, and then we copy write, and we come and paste write in there. So now we have moved the data for John Doe here. All what we need to do now is to clear the template for the next person to be entered, right? So we clear the template here so that we can receive data for the next person. Now that we are done, we can now stop our recording. Great. We can stop our recording and then we have a data in there. Now let's see if our recording works well. Remember, if you are recording and you make a mistake, you may have to re-record, start it again, because every mistake you make, every error you make will be replicated in the template you're generating. So we enter a details of someone else, Karen, and the hood, and then we enter an email, C and at gmail.com. We have a phone, and then we have the gender to be female. We can just select that to be female. Age is 56, and then Karen cannot read. Karen not applicable here. Now that we have the sample, another sample client or entry here, we can press our shortcut. Remember the shortcut Control Shift and E. If you forget, go to your macros here and then options. You can edit, you can change and update it anytime you want. Control Shift and E, it performs the action for us quickly. So you can see, as you can see, when you come here, it has put in all the data in here, and then it has cleared the template for us, right? So those of you who want to use the shortcut, just press Control Shift and E. It is our shortcut. You can change it or anything else. If you want to use a button for the user or whoever is entering the data for you or registering should press the button to register, you would come to the same developer tab here. Then you look for insert, right? You look for insert. If insert is not highlighted, it will be because you have protected the workbook. So you may have to go back to review and unprotect the sheet for now. Go back to developer and it is activated. Go to insert and let's insert a form control button, as you can see at the top here. So we create a button here, and then the big button. So we will select the data entry as the macro that I want to assign to the button. We press enter. Right click on it, and then we can do format control to make the detailed changes on the text. So we can call this submit here. You can change the font and all that. You can do your font changing, make it bold, change the font color. You can make it blue or whatever font color you want it to be, and that is fine. If this seems to be smaller for you, uh, we can also try and then maybe we can also try and then we can also try and increase it to be much bigger, right? It's a little bigger. So button 5, we can alter the text and call it submit. The first one did not work. Submit. Right. So whenever the button is clicked, the action happens, or when the user presses Control Shift plus Enter, the action happens as well. So we can try that and see. So we can try Frank, and then we can try Frank Cakes, and the email is fcakes@gmail.com, and then the phone is 890, and all that, and then the gender is male and the age is 87, and then can read, yes, and then can write is as well, yes. When we press submit, it does the same thing for us. We have Frank Kicks at the top here, as you can see. Great. Now, assuming you made an entry which is a mistake, you want to recall it, right, and do changes to that. So we want to add a recall button or recall shortcut. Now, to do that, a recall basically will be recording another macro for recall. And what the recall is going to do is that since our latest entry is on the row 4, we will go and recall all the details from row 4, bring it back into our form, and delete that row so we can update that row. So this is what we are going to do. You're going to say record macros again and call it recall, right? The shortcut will be Control Shift plus R. Whatever shortcut you want to give it, you can give it. We come to data, and then you copy the first name. Remember, the latest recall should be on row 4. And then you come to first name and paste the Frank. You copy. In as much as we are copying Frank Cakes, what the function is going to do, the system is going to do is that it copies whatever details is in row 4 for the data sheet. So you do not worry about that. It copies back the email. Oh, sorry, the email is supposed to be this. So we'll be copying the email back here. The phone will copy it. You have to take time and copy each of them one after the other. And if you're recording macros, please do not make errors, because errors will be replicated in the template. If you make an error, you realize you make an error, you can re-record anytime and delete previously recorded macros. So we would copy this as well and paste it in there. Copy this as well and then paste it in here. Now that we have gotten all the details of the latest submission in row 4, we can now delete row 4. We delete row 4, right? Then we come back here and we activate cell D9. Then we can now stop our recording, right? We can now stop our recording. Now that we have stopped our recording, anytime we press Control Shift and R, it is going to actually bring the last submission here, which is Karen Underwood. Let's try that and see. Control Shift and R. You see, it has brought Karen Underwood here for us quickly. And if you go back into the data, Karen Underwood is no more there. That way, let's now add a button. We can insert a button again, the same process of inserting a button, and then we will assign the recall macros to that button. We can call the button, let's do our format controls and then call it a recall button, and then we are going to make it bold. We are going to give it a font size of 20 and then a color of something like this. Okay, great. So let me alter the text. This should be record. Great. So now, assuming we have, let's enter a new details here and we can do the recall. You can see how that works quickly. So we're going to enter something very quickly and then we are going to hit a recall and bring it back. So let's have Mike, Mike, Mike. Then we have Mike Pack, something like this. And we have mpack at gmail.com, and then the phone is in there, and then the age is 56, the gender is 45, the gender is Neil and Mike can not read, Mike can write for some reason. Now, when we submit Mike, you see that Mike has been submitted, details of Mike has been submitted, what is that the data? But if you realize that there's an error and you want to recall, you click on recall and it brings back the details of Mike Pack for you, which is no more in there. And that is it about data entry template in Excel. We have another version of the training for those of us who want to do data entry and template registration template in Google Sheet. The same thing, recording of macros and all that. One advantage of that is that multiple people can be entering on the same Google Sheet. Since it's an online, it can be shared with multiple people. So check out the comment if you also want to see a sample of what we just created. Check in the comment. There's a link to download this Excel workbook for you, and you can check the codes and all that in there. So that's it about creating data entry template, registration template in Excel. But before we end, remember at the beginning we said we're going to save our workbook at the end. Now, for what we have done, if you save it as a normal Excel workbook, you are going to lose every code that comes behind it. For Excel file that has VBAs or codes behind, we need to save it as a macro enabled format. You have to select the Excel macro enabled workbook .xl SM, XLSM format and save it. That way, whenever you open it, you can have the code. If you don't do that, you will lose the code behind it, and it will not be what you have done will disappear. So that is it. Thanks for joining. Remember, if you want to check the code, you can go to macros for each of them. If you press on edit, you see the code behind it. You can see the code uh, behind that, right? For advanced users who want to do some editing in there. Thanks for joining our training today, and we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and like, share the video, and keep learning. Data College will help you build solutions to your data problems. We see you again next time. Bye bye.